me a god. Let's go. All right. Did it mess up mid adding the people to it? What in the world? Why did it do that? They call me a god. There we go. Okay, it put everybody on there this time. Joseph showed up and then stepped back out, I guess. But all right, sorry. Anyway, we'll wait on Joseph to come back in here and welcome everybody. We're back again with part 2 of speaking with Joseph, and there he is. And today, we had talked previously, and we left off talking about some different things in evolution, such as transitional fossils and speciation, and we kind of made that a stopping point and agreed to come back later, and we would talk more about those things, and that way I could actually bring some sources and things to provide to show my point of view on this subject. How are you doing today, Joseph?
Hey, what's going on, bud?
Not
Doing
much.
all right.
I'm going to. I know it doesn't matter because you both have the same picture, but I moved you up there. We have, as a special guest moderator today, we've got Will. And Will's going to be just, kind of making sure we don't overtalk each other, keeping track of time and stuff. I didn't get a chance to talk to you too much earlier, Joseph. I just sent you the info, which apparently you got. Was that okay as far as format, though? Are you okay to go on that?
I'll be honest with you, dude. I didn't even see it.
Okay.
I caught your email about the time about a couple of hours ago. I've just been so busy. I'm barely prepared. I just slapped something together last night, as a matter of fact. But I wanted to do it. I said I'd do it, and here I am. And we'll just see how it goes. But what was the format, though? If you just fill me in real quick.
The format I'd sent was 10-minute openings, up to 10-minute openings, and then to do like a 5-minute each cross examination, just to ask each other questions and respond, and then go into just an open discussion for a while, and then optional closings and questions and stuff at the end. And I mean, we don't have to. It's not a strict thing or anything. It was just something to give us something to go by. But we'll, like my opening isn't going to be quite 10 minutes either. It's a few minutes, and asking questions of each other and stuff. I really just brought a few slides and articles and things to talk about. So really, once we get into the back and forth discussion thing, I think that's kind of where we're both wanting to go anyway. But just because we've talked before and maybe not everybody's seen that, we'll take a few minutes and just lay out what our position is on these things related to speciation and transitional fossils. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, that's all right. I got about 15 or 18 minutes on the flood. I thought we were doing the flood and Lucy or transitional.
We can talk about the flood. That works.
No, that's fine. That's just where most of my time went to
Yeah.
get prepared for. I thought that was the main focus. We just kind of threw Lucy in there at the last second. I wasn't really sure, brother. I guess I should have contacted you a little earlier this week. I apologize.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's no big deal. How about this? I mean, I assume you want to take the position that a worldwide flood is a historic fact, right?
Yeah, well, actually, yes, yes, I would. Like
Okay.
my position is technically that sites like the Morris Foundation, that these sites are found all over the world. They can only be explained by continent-wide catastrophic flooding, not localized
Okay.
situations. So
Well, why don't and I'm fine with that because really the stuff that I mean, we did talk about transitional fossils, and the stuff that I brought for transitional fossils also kind of explains speciation, so we don't really have to make that a two-part thing. so we can talk about the flood and then how that relates to transitional fossils in the fossil record. I think that those things will tie together nicely still. You okay with that?
Right on. Sounds good.
Okay, so would you like to begin since you're going to take the position that that happened, the affirmative?
Sure. Sure. I can
And
do
you'll
it.
get the last word as well for starting.
Okay. Let me all right. Share my screen here real quick.
Sure.
And like I said, this is probably going to go a little longer than 10 minutes. I'll blaze through it as fast as I can. But if you just want to give me a shout out on time or just shut me up whenever you need to, I'm okay with that also.
Yeah, yeah. Will, you want to give him like a minute notice or something at the end here? And
Yeah, yeah. I'll check in with you, Joseph, when we get close to the 10-minute mark. And if you go over a little bit, this is pretty lax. I'm not gonna crucify you or anything.
sweet. That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
Okay,
if he
right
goes
on.
over, that's fine. I'm not really concerned about that. I would like to let him get his position out as best as possible. So I'll let Will kind of take over control here of the back and forth. And are you prepared to go, Joseph?
Yes, sir.
All right, Will, go ahead.
All right, Joseph. When you share your screen, I'll start the timer, and then, like we said, I'll just give you a heads up when we're getting close to the 10-minute mark, so you can assess on how much you're going to need, and we'll go from there.
All right, sounds good. It's nice to meet you, anyways. By the way, Will.
Of course.
All right, so you just want me to take off?
Yeah, go
Yep.
for it.
And when you do, I'll start the timer.
All right, so like I said, I just slapped this together real quick last night. It's kind of shotgun anyway, so we'll just blast through it real quick and hopefully get in under the 10-minute mark. But as I said to Joe a minute ago, my main contention is that places like the Morrison Formation can only be explained by catastrophic events. And I think the evidence lays that out very clearly, which we'll go through real quick. The Morrison Formation is famous for its dinosaur fossils. It stretches across a huge area of the western United States, and it leaves evidence that demands alignment with historical accounts of a global flood. I'm going to cover the formation's characteristics, the fossils it goes through, broader geological patterns, arguing that catastrophic worldwide flood provides possibly the only explanatory framework. The facts about the Morrison Formation are recognized by all geologists. These things are not in question. The only question is the amount of time, the amount of water, things like this. The core of this presentation will focus on specific lines of evidence from the Morrison. I'll also address common questions, including the relationship between the Genesis account and other ancient flood narratives, as well as consider potential mechanisms for the flood event itself. The Morrison Formation is a well-defined sequence of sedimentary rocks centered in Wyoming and Colorado, with outcrops in Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, the panhandles of Oklahoma and Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Idaho, with equivalent rocks all the way up in Canada, actually. Its a geographic footprint is immense and amazing, covering a significant portion of the western interior of the United States. Now, the conventional view reconstructs this Morrison Formation as forming over millions of years in diverse, relatively slow-paced environments like rivers, slowly meandering across plains, and floods like from lakes, seasonally, of course. But this interpretation attempts to explain the mix of rock types and fossils found. The ecosystem is pictured as a rich and very dominated by the now famous dinosaurs, these huge Apatosauruses and Brontosauruses. Keep these interpretations in mind as I go through this evidence, please. And ask yourself, do the features of the Morrison Formation speak of slow, gradual processes operating over vast eons, or do they point towards something far more dramatic, like a single world-altering event like the Genesis flood? My position is that the evidence aligns much more strongly with a catastrophic flood model. Consider the sheer volume of rock in the Morrison. We're talking about thick layers, up to 300 feet thick, spread over hundreds of thousands of cubic square miles. This is like 700,000 square miles, I think. Can slow meandering rivers and small lakes realistically deposit that much material so consistently across such a big range of area, even over millions of years? I don't think so. And the catastrophic erosion and transportation of sediments by global floodwaters provide a much better explanation for the sheer scale of deposition that we observe. The energy required points to an event far beyond typical geological processes. One of the most compelling features of the Morrison is its dinosaur bone beds. Places like the Cleveland Lloyd contain a jumbled remains of hundreds of dinosaurs all packed together. How did these form slowly? Did all these predators decide to die in the same small area over centuries? Again, doubtful. Excuse me. The flood provides a direct explanation. Large populations caught in turbulent, sediment-laden waters, their carcasses transported and dumped together in depositional areas as currents slowed. This explains the concentration, the mix of species found, and the disarticulation of the skeletons. The Morrison isn't a small local feature. It covers this massive area on the map. It's just amazingly big. Again, 700,000 square miles. While there are variations over the character of the formation, it's recognizable across the vast distance as being the same. It holds all the same characteristics. Dinosaurs are all found in death poses. The plants, the marine fossils, it all looks the same across this whole swath. Trying to explain this with isolated rivers and lakes operating independently over millions of years requires an amazing amount of faith in coincidence. A single continent covering, or larger, flood provides a straightforward mechanism for depositing the relatively continuous sheet of sediment with similar characteristics across such a broad region. Then there are the alignment patterns. Large dinosaur fossils found aligned in consistent directions within the fossil beds, large-scale boulder beds, and sediment deposits within or associated with related strata often show directional alignment. I mean, these things are all facing the same way. This indicates deposition by powerful unidirectional waters or currents like tsunami waves. It's very inconsistent with slow meandering river deposition, which creates a more varied orientation. The evidence demonstrates that large objects within these deposits were not randomly oriented. Multi-ton dinosaur carcasses and large boulders seem to have been lined up by powerful water flows like logs in a current. And to evidence that, we can look at another part of Texas where the geologist investigates a canyon that carved in just 3 days. Now, for time's sake, I'm not going to read all this like I had planned to, but the fact of the matter is, in 3 days, it carved a canyon that was 1.5 miles long and more than 23 feet deep. And then he tells you how it happened right here. But the most important part of this is the highlighted area, where it's important to note that he's explaining in this article that the strength of the rock that is being eroded is not the limiting factor in how quickly erosion can happen. It's more dependent on the amount of water and sediment. Lots of water and sediment, quick erosions. And he did all this because they're trying to study the difference of models in here and in Mars to make quantitative reconstructions on how much water was there, how long it lasted, and how quickly it moved. This is one of few places where models for canyon formation can be tested because we know the flood conditions under which the canyon formed very quickly. More dinosaurs in the death pose. These are the fossils that they're finding all along this Morrison formation. The exceptional preservation that we see, the bones still connected, fine details intact, soft tissue, things like that, it demands rapid burial. This could not have happened over multiple years, over millions of years. It just doesn't work that way. They would have been carried away and destroyed. Scavengers would have gotten it. So where does this rapid burial mechanism come from in the standard model? I mean, just the best guess they have would be a localized flash flood. While possible, not likely to explain the many fossils across the huge area. It just doesn't work. The global flood provides the perfect mechanism with massive amounts of water, sediment suspended in it, burying countless organisms quickly and efficiently. There's also the marine geology, or the marine fossils, that is in every layer, above the Morrison, below the Morrison, in the Morrison. It's all there. And this happens on throughout the geologic column. Throughout the geologic column, it shows extensive marine inundation. It's there. The water is there. The shellfish are there. The fossils are there. Moving on. Let's see. For time's sake, I know everybody's heard of these, the polystrate fossils. You can see the different lines of strata. One tree going up the middle of it. No way that lasted for millions of years. It would have rotted off. So there goes another one. These are the dinosaur bone beds all throughout the area. Again, I'm up on 9 minutes, so we'll just keep moving. This is really just about the interpretation of the evidence. It goes all over the place. You know, they go with uniformitarianism. My side would go with catastrophism. The different flood stories all over the place. I think that it speaks more to a shared memory. It strongly suggests that a shared human experience that all these people were writing about this. And little details may be wrong, but the core elements are always the same. There's a catastrophic flood, divine judgment or intervention, the survival of a remnant of people. These go across the board. They're just small details to get changed. And again, for brevity's sake, you can just throw in the Tower of Babel and the scattering of collected knowledge and languages. And when people come to write these stories, they relied on embellishments or just misunderstandings or just forgot and put what they wanted. I mean, that's why they're all so similar, but they have differences. And when you figure Abraham from Ur of the Chaldees, which was a Sumerian city, only about 30 miles or so from Uruk, it stands to reason that these flood stories likely circulated widely because that was a trade hub. So moving on, this is an article about where the water came from for the flood. It's in this stuff called ringwoodite, and it holds more than, there's 3 times in the mantle of the earth right now than there is water in the oceans. 3 times the water. These sponges suck it up perfectly, and that's where it is. That's where it goes. It goes on to talk about a whole earth water cycle too, which brings in the fountains of the deep, the hydrothermal vents. Yep.
I don't mean to cut you off, but we're just getting close to the 10-minute mark. I just didn't know how far you wanted to go. I just wanted to let you know.
No, yes, sir. I'm almost done. I blasted through. I got one more slide left. I just want to.
You're good. You're good. I just wanted to keep you informed.
I just want to show this about the. My point with this slide right here is that the lunar tide, or the moon, makes the tide happen all around the globe. All around the globe. It doesn't necessarily have to be the whole earth flooded at once. It could be massive water and the moon pulling the high tide around different sections of the earth to where it all floods in the same event, but at separate times. I think that's easily bared out on that. And then again, in conclusion, it seems to me that even the rocks and the fossils are crying out to testify about this world-altering event of the flood. These are all animals that were found there: crocodilians, pterosaurs, brontosaurus, raptosaurus. There's birds, there's plants, ferns. There's just all kinds of stuff there. And there's zero sign of gradual change or evolution. Every one of them's all there, fully formed. There's no way that this Morrison formation happened over millions of years. And I'll shut off right there.
Thank you, Joseph, for that opening. And Joe, you can start whenever you want. And when you do, I will go ahead and start your timer as well.
Okay, go ahead and start. So first of all, I appreciate Will coming and moderating this on such short notice. And Joseph was a why did we end up getting that come up on the screen? Joseph was a pleasure to talk to last time, and I expect so this time as well. So I appreciate Joseph taking the time to discuss these things with me as well. That being said, I would side with the scientific consensus on the position of a worldwide flood and say that not only do we not see any unique direct evidence of a worldwide flood, but it's one of the things that we actually see lots of evidence across lots of different branches of science that didn't happen. Specifically, since most of this centered around the Morrison formation, let's discuss that area. So in the area where the Morrison formation is, we know that there's been a couple of very large mega floods, super floods, whatever word you'd like to use to describe those. We know that there's been some extreme flooding from melting ice dams and such. I would argue, though, that what we don't see in this case is hydrologic sorting of these fossils. Um, we do see fossils in this area, and they weren't picked apart by scavengers or anything, because in order for fossilization to occur, they would have to be rapidly covered, preventing the decay process from happening. So that's why we do find that. And we don't find with an event laying these fossils down again, we don't see either the layers or the fossils in hydrologically sorted. What we do see, however, though, is that these fossils are in the layers that we predict them to be in. We predict that we won't find bird fossils with ancient theropod fossils, and we don't, modern birds. We we see throughout the layers, the deeper you go, that these fossils go from less complex body forms to more complex, and change with the environment. The as for and I'm kind of doing this like a little bit of a rebuttal, but just because this is, last minute thing here. But we also don't uh, with a one major event causing this, these layers would have all been laid down at once, and the deposition would have to occur through what some 300 feet of mud, and you would end up with not well defined layers, but mixed up layers. And we do see evidence of there being a local flood in that area, but we, in fact, multiple times, and we also know that at one point that was that part of the world was underwater, and for the time period that we expect it was underwater is where we actually find those marine fossils, which provides a natural explanation for that. And I would take the position that when we have evidence that points to a natural explanation for these things, that there's no need to then go and insert a supernatural one. And furthermore, when you do that, if your evidence points to both of these things being true, then we would say which one is probably true. And the one that is probably true is the one that fits the other scientific branches across time, and that we can make testable predictions about. And that's really the main crux of the problem here with the flood narrative, is that the things we would expect to see in a worldwide flood that laid all these things down in a catastrophic event, we don't see. What we do see is things that are consistent with these being multiple layers laid down over long periods of time. And we don't just see these layers in this Morrison formation. These layers are around the world, and they look different depending on different things, geomorphology and all that. But we do find these layers, and we never find fossils from one layer in other layers where they shouldn't be, or where we wouldn't expect them to be anyway. Also, with these fossils that we find, the multiple forms of dating that we have also coincide with the with this being an event, with this being multiple events taking place over a long period of time. So along with that, whenever we use other branches of science to look at this same claim, such as, and one of the things that we were going to bring in this is transitional fossils. These transitional fossils, we don't find them mixed together either. We find that, again, we see slow changes over time as we move forward throughout the fossil record and get into the diversity of life that we see today. That being said, I think that I expect that Joseph is covering this and giving reasons why he thinks it's true. I would like everyone to just keep in mind, though, that if we have a a natural explanation that fits a total model across multiple disciplines of science, that would be the best explanation, and is the best explanation accepted by, or is the explanation accepted by the scientific consensus, again across multiple disciplines, including geology, paleontology, archaeology, and many others. You mentioned something about the moon also. I think that that doesn't fit the biblical narrative, because even after the flood occurred, there was some months where they didn't see another mountain from where the ark landed in the Bible. So I don't think you could say that the flood was moving around different places around the earth. The Bible describes a worldwide flood that covers the top of the tallest mountains and takes forever to recede as well. So I don't think that's consistent with the biblical narrative either. But I digress on that. I'm not trying to prove the biblical method off, or the biblical narrative, obviously. And that's really all I got with that. We can go ahead and move on.
All right. Thank you, Joe. We finished 2 minutes early. Do you want me to add that to the open discussion, or?
Well, we'll play the open discussion by ear. We can just go on into the cross examination questions, and we can let Joseph start with that, asking questions if you
Right.
like.
So, Joseph, I won't start the timer until you ask your first question, but you have 5 minutes to question Joe. And just like last time, if we run over, that's fine. I'm just going to give you guys a heads up when we're nearing the 5 minute mark.
And
All
I'll
right.
try my best to give you short, concise answers, Joseph, to not eat up your time.
All right.
All
All
right.
right. Yeah. Well, the first question I have is, how do you explain the 300-foot thick layer of mud that the allosaur, the stegosaur, the brontosaur, the ferns, the ammonites, all these fossils are in the same layer? So you keep saying that they're in different layers, and hydrologic sorting doesn't it doesn't explain it, but it doesn't have to. These are all in the same layers. It's a deposition layer. How long do you think it took to form that layer?
A layer 300 foot thick, I would expect, would take thousands of years in order to for deposition to occur, because that layer has to dry out and harden into stone.
Okay,
Uh,
so how do you explain the fully formed fossils? Like, they're all intact. Most of them are articulated. They're all together. That they haven't been eroded. They haven't been scavenged or decayed. They're all preserved. So if it took hundreds of thousands of years, that wouldn't be the case, would it?
I, yeah, I still think if they're covered quickly, and the fossilization occurs when something's covered quickly, and then the mineralization occurs because decay hasn't been able to occur because it's been cut off from oxygen and bacteria. So,
Okay,
I,
but we're talking about a stretch of land from Canada down to New Mexico. You think just a local river did that?
no, I
In
don't.
Okay,
I
so
think there are major flooding events there that throughout history, and that what you're calling a stretch of land from Canada down to Texas isn't what that land resembled at the time the dinosaurs were on it.
well, that's speculation on your part.
No, it's not. It's plate tectonics.
So you were there allegedly 192 million years ago.
No, but we've carbon dated these things to the time period to where
Okay,
we know the position of the plates.
well, there's assumptions, with that too. But anyways, so it's your contention that this continent wide. So you admit that floods did happen. You just don't think it was one big one. You think it's more likely that thousands of smaller floods left the exact same residue across the whole continent.
Well, I know that we know of it at least two events that were floods in that exact area, and it's not continent wide. It's not even half of the continent. It's not even. I
North
would
to
say it's
south,
not even a
north
third.
to south, not east to west continent wide, north to south. It goes from Canada to New Mexico. It's almost the whole continent.
Well, the continent would be from up to the Arctic Circle down to Central
Yes.
America.
Okay. Semantic. You're right. You're right.
Yeah. Um, so it's just what are we calling the continent? I guess. The continental United States, sure, I'll give that. But also, again, we have major flooding events, and we see evidence of those events. What we don't see is evidence of that all across the world. We see it still in that area, and it's precisely the area you're pointing to.
Well, those areas exist all over the world, like the cliffs of Dover run all the way to Australia. I
The
mean,
cliffs of Dover are a major problem for the flood
yeah.
narrative.
So that's what I mean. Sites like this are all over the globe, all over the globe. So like, I don't understand how it could be just chalked up. I don't understand how the better explanation is countless smaller
I didn't
floods.
take countless. I fossils. I said that fossils occur when they're quickly covered, and we know that there were a couple of major flooding events in that area. Also, you're close to the Pacific ridge of that plate there, which is out in the Pacific Ocean over there, and there were lots of tsunamis and stuff historically that science has pointed to happening in that area, and in fact, there's record of some of them. So.
Right. That's exactly my case for the Morrison Formation. Tsunami tidal waves. That's how you get multi-ton carcasses and boulders lined up in
Well,
directional orientation. You don't get that with local floods over hundreds of thousands of years.
so that's not really a question, but I'll respond. I think that um, yeah, I don't think you can say that the biblical worldwide flood occurred and that there was hundreds of feet of water going to the top of the tallest mountains and that there were tsunamis hitting land. Um, Tsunamis are with these major waves hit land. You don't have that.
Say that again.
So these tsunamis that that I just said, and you said, yeah, that we had these major tsunamis during the flood. Number one, you wouldn't have that all at once, and second, the tsunamis you're talking about, all of this land would have been way underwater at the time, if a biblical flood occurred. So how is it washing these onto there and the water continues to churn, yet they get laid down on the land instead of the lower points, and again, not hydrologically sorted. So
Because
Not to cut you guys off, but we're right at the 5 minute mark.
go ahead, Joseph. You can ask a couple more since we kind of got hung up there.
oh, I was just going to say for the same reason for the tidal draw. I mean, it's a tide going in and out, so it wouldn't be X number of feet of water at one time around the whole globe at the same time. It would be
Uh,
a tide. It would be a tide moving around the globe, and it would hit this area, and then it would hit that area, and it would go follow the moon all the way around the globe. It wouldn't be like it wouldn't be like a ball just busting water out of it all over the place. It wouldn't be like a bathtub raising water. Do you know what I mean?
well, yeah. So without land for those tides to break on, you would have a bulge that just moves continuously around the Earth on both the side of the moon and opposite side of the Earth that the moon is on. So
Well, that's why I'm not indicating a total land coverage at the same time. And because if it did happen that way, the tide would become harmonic and you would get those 300-400 foot waves that you're talking about. I'm not even claiming that.
so okay. So I'll switch and ask questions then to get to the next part. So what you're claiming isn't the narrative that's explained in the Bible, where water was deep enough to cover the tops of the tallest mountains all around the earth, but that there was still land. The western United States now still had land available, yet mountains were covered thousands of feet up in other places. Is that the position?
Well, no, I don't think the tallest mountains that we have today were probably there around a few thousand years ago. I think that the flood, the plate tectonics, the catastrophic plate tectonics, the scripture says the mountains arose and the valleys sank down and the water assuaged. So that's when the water left the earth. It probably went into the mantle, into that ringwoodite that I was talking about earlier. So
Um,
I mean, I don't think that the water at the time of the flood. I don't think there were mountains as high as Everest back then. I guess is my answer.
okay. Um, do you think that mountain ranges can uplift across a continent in the period of time you're allowing for that to happen? Or better yet, have we seen that ever happen?
Well, I mean, I think that we have seen mountain ranges form, or not form necessarily, but grow. They get bigger all the time, right? Because of the plate movement. Um, so no, to answer your question, just very straightforwardly, no, I couldn't point to one right now, but that is exactly what geologic plate tectonics suggests. So I don't see how it's controversial.
And we'll get into that. And what is there any like piece of evidence or anything that would falsify your position?
But yeah, you could explain how the dino beds, the fossil beds like the Morrison Formation and all the other ones around the world like it, happened without large scale flooding.
So, an explanation for that, a natural explanation for that, would falsify your position.
Well, actual evidence, that proves it. I mean, just telling me I'm wrong because that wouldn't. Do you know what I mean?
Right? No, no, I accept that. I mean, yeah, I get you. So, uh, do you what's the what, do you have an explanation of why we don't see fossils hydrologically sorted? Like just a brief one. You don't have to really get into evidence and stuff. But is there an explanation that you have for why we don't see them hydrologically sorted?
I mean, I guess the easy answer is no. I don't agree with you that we don't see it sorted that way.
Okay, all right. And
I mean, again, you would have to explain why there's marine fossils right here, and then 300-foot thick of mud and volcanic ash right here, and then more marine fossils right on top of that, and they're all the same. It's not like they've evolved and these are different species of marine fossils. They're all the same. It's all happened at the same time. They're all dated the same.
so
So, so it
yeah,
seems
yeah.
like hydrological sorting based on tidal floods.
Well, how? Well, I'll break that down in our back and forth because it's not really a question. But so you're aware that we have two major mountain ranges in the United States, the Appalachian and the Rockies, correct?
Yep, I've heard about them.
So why do we not see that why do we see that the Appalachian Mountains are so heavily eroded like they've been there for an incredibly long time and the Rocky Mountains are so much newer?
I don't know.
Okay.
Like I don't.
Um, you do agree though that we see that though that the Rocky Mountains are more curved and smaller and are
I agree that they look different. I wouldn't agree that I can look at each of them and tell which one's older just by looking.
okay.
But I agree they don't look the same.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Um, those marine fossils that you pointed to earlier, do we find those marine fossils in the same layer as the dinosaur fossils, the land animals?
Not all of them. There are ammonite fossils, and there are fish fossils. There are frog and crocodilian fossils. Um, but I can't guarantee that they're in the same layer, the mud layer, as the allosaur and the stegosaur and all these pterosaurs.
And one more question. You brought up polystrate fossils during your opening. Are you aware of a common thread that we find in most everywhere that we find polystrate fossils?
I mean, even if I were, I have no idea what you're about to say.
Okay. Okay. So uh, we'll go ahead and concede the questions, and we'll just talk back and forth here. I think it'll be a little easier to get through this. So what
Okay.
I mean by that is that polystrate fossils seem to be found in ancient floodplains, and that places that have seasonal flooding seem to explain why you would find those because you have a a fossilized tree that's been covered up, and then because of seasonal flooding, that land is eroded away, exposing it, and then the next layer is laid on top. covering back up that already fossilized tree. And so it goes through multiple layers of strata.
And
Um,
that's speculation or a best guess, or I mean,
well,
if,
no, there's
if,
geologic evidence that they're on floodplains.
okay,
Um,
right, okay, but like even if that were true for a certain number of trees, like trees in this certain area, that wouldn't necessarily make it true for every polystrate fossil.
no,
Like
no,
like the ones going like the ones going through coal seams.
no, no. Yeah, you're right. Because at some point we have to. Well, the coal seams thing is a little different, but the you're right, because we account for the ones that we've studied, and then we do apply what we found to others in the same situation. We don't necessarily know the entire history of every place that those have been found. They're not very common either. So, um, but
There's a whole lot of them. I mean, it may not technically be common for all the fossils that we have, but it happens a lot over a lot of different areas. Like Yellowstone, Joggins, Nova Scotia, this happens a lot.
yeah, yeah. The So, are you okay, Will?
Yeah, I'm here, and I know we moved into discussion, so I started the timer for that as well.
Oh, okay. I just seen that you dropped out and came back in. I was just making sure you got connected back. Okay. Um. All right. So, whenever I asked you about what would falsify your position, you said, having evidence that explains these fossils being laid out the way they are over that amount of time, and I think that is. I think that's exactly the thing that we find in geology and in paleontology, though, is that whenever you, first of all, the radiometric dating of many of these layers and some of the material that's in them points to these things being older than the age that is allowed in the Bible. And whenever you apply that finding of science to whenever you take that observation and apply it to your further observations after that, it does give an explanation for that these animals lived long ago, which matches up with the radiometric dating, and that these layers were laid down over time, and that's why we don't find fossils of animals where they shouldn't be. Whereas if they were hydrologically sorted, we would find them mixed up all over the place, right? They wouldn't be they would be either sorted by density, or you would find big deposits of just bones all mixed up together, not articulated or any of that. But that's the opposite of what we see.
Right. I mean, they are articulated and they're all in a death pose. I mean, these huge 100-foot long animals that weigh multiple tons were scared and retching back as they were dying and drowning. I mean, that's a big flood. That's a lot of water, right?
Well, not necessarily water, but
Well,
I mean water.
in the Morrison Formation, exactly, mud and volcanic ash.
Yeah. So again, with the Morrison formation, though, we know of at least a few events where, like, an ice dam melted, releasing a lot of waters from when the glaciers were receding, which caused flooding in that exact area. And we do see, like, the rocks and stuff at the ends of that flood zone are hydrologically sorted, but mudslides and, like you said, volcanic ash and things like that covering up these life forms that live there in the area would explain that. A worldwide flood, I don't agree with your position that you could have the water described in the Bible and have land animals walking around in the United States that get covered up at the same time, or the modern United States, of course. I don't agree with that. I think that's your the Bible clearly states that the waters covered the tops of the tallest peaks, and that when they landed on Mount Ararat, that it took, like, I want to say it was 72 days before they seen the top of another mountain. Which, again, if the moon was the thing controlling those tides, would not be the case. Um, and furthermore, I think that that speaks with the larger problem of this is that sure, within a single discipline, you can give an explanation for some of the things we see, but then whenever we take multiple disciplines to form an actual model of the history of our world, that it's only through deep time and evolution over millions of years that fits all of those things.
Are you there?
Yeah, yeah. Did you hear me?
Oh, okay. I got up until deep time and then I
Oh,
froze.
okay. Sorry. So I think that it's only through the explanation of deep time and these things living, evolving over millions of years, that multiple disciplines of science agree on that, giving us the model of our planet's history. Whereas in your flood narrative, these things can fit certain evidences, but not all of these multiple disciplines at the same time. And that's really
What
my
I
biggest issue with your narrative.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of telling you the same thing though, like slow, gradual processes and no transitional forms and no sign of evolution through millions of years in this one layer that kind of negates everything you're trying to squeeze in there and say that it explains it. It doesn't.
So
These things were buried quickly at the same time and all together. Again, I asked the question in my opening, like, is it your contention that all these predators just hung out in the same area for thousands of years, waiting to die in the exact same place and be covered up? Like, it
no,
just
no,
doesn't make sense.
it's my contention that there were multiple populations of predators over millions of years that were covered up in multiple layers.
But it's not multiple layers; it's one 300-foot layer,
And as for the one single layer, you find exactly what you would expect to find in that layer.
which
You
is
don't find
stasis.
you
There's
don't
no
find
evolution.
you don't find any, not a single older fossil that's in deeper layers only. You don't find it in that layer. You don't, like, uh,
Yeah, there are ammonites below it and above it.
in the same layer.
Ammonites. No, I
Well,
said under it, and above it, and a
that,
layer
that
under it, and a layer above it. So that either points to hydrological sorting, or it points to definitely that your timeline is off
if
because there are allegedly older fossils above it and below it.
if you find if you find you're saying we find ammonites above and below it. That refutes your hydrologic sorting narrative.
No, not
Hydrologic
if it's
hydrologic.
not if it's getting laid down along the tides. You keep forgetting the tides.
Well, again, I don't accept that you could have bare land in one area and thousands of feet of water in another area.
It happens all the time. What are you talking about? It's happening right now.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Where do we have water that's as deep as Mount Ararat and on Earth, that's going that high in altitude and not flooding?
That's all staying like a high tide in a bulge under the moon. It's not all around the earth at once. It's in a bulge in following the moon around the earth. So all the water you're talking about would not be spread around the earth that deep. It would all be following the moon.
Well, again, I mean that's fine, but it doesn't match the biblical account, which is my
Well,
understanding.
no, I mean, I'm the one of us that believes in the Bible, brother, and I think that it does.
Yeah.
You're telling me that it doesn't by your interpretation. I don't see a
Well, no.
problem there at all. So just by you saying I don't see it doesn't match the Bible, I think it does match the Bible. He talks about the fountains of the deep breaking forth. That's where all the water comes from. I spoke about it in my opening about the whole Earth water cycle system. How it's that I mean that also solves the heat problem. I mean, there are multiple layers to this that I probably just didn't do a good job explaining in
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Um. And I mean, I'll hit this real quick just because you said it, but you can't solve the heat problem in a young Earth. That's the big problem. Is
Okay. Well, I mean, if it was really as hot as the alleged decay rates, and understand this, I believe those came from a Christian trying to squeeze this in there, those decay rates. But
we affirm.
anyways, if it was that hot, we would expect to find melted rock all over the place. Like
Right,
we don't.
because it wasn't that hot.
Exactly. So I don't
Yeah.
have a heat problem. Thank you.
Well, no, I think you misunderstand what I'm saying. It would be that hot if you tried to squeeze that all of that decay into
Or
the
the
core.
guy's wrong, or the assumption about the decay rate is wrong.
Well, I mean,
Because we can see in polonium halo rings that if it was that hot, they wouldn't exist either. We don't see that. We don't see a melted rock. Clearly, the assumption is wrong.
well, but okay, so if the assumption isn't wrong, which it relies on the laws of physics remaining the same, that it didn't violate the laws of physics as we know them now, which I know is what the thing you're going to point to, but um, the decay rates, there's no reason to suggest that they did change. First of all, that they're not what we observe them to be and what we've always observed them to be, but um, the problem with the squeezing all of those decay rates into that amount of time is that's what causes the heat problem, is the amount of decay. And the only way around that is for you to say the decay rates weren't the same. But in order for the decay rates to not be the same, you would have to literally change
Well,
the
you're basing this on what the alleged decay rate ought to be if it happened in that time frame. And my position is that that assumption is wrong.
the
Clearly, with
observed.
the two lines of evidence that I showed, there's no melted rock and there is
Yeah,
radio polonium halos.
which
So those two things alone should negate the alleged decay rate that caused all the heat to begin with.
let me
Do you
see if
see what
I
I'm
can
saying?
explain. Yeah, I do understand what you're saying, but I think I'm not explaining it well. The decay rates that we observe, not assuming anything, the decay rates that we currently observe things decaying at, there is no evidence or reason at all. In fact, there's plenty of reasons that you can't suggest that they were different. Um, so unless you want to suggest some reason that these decay rates are not what we observe them to be, then it is still a problem for you.
Okay, maybe this is where we're crossed because the decay rate is responsible for the heat, correct?
Partially,
But
yes.
yeah, okay. So maybe that's our disconnect right there. My point is that the alleged temperature and the heat that is supposed to give us the heat problem. We don't have a decay rate problem. We have a heat problem allegedly. So what
Yeah.
I'm telling you is, however they're coming up with that heat is an error because we don't see the melted rock that it would definitely produce, and we do see the radio polonium halos, which it would definitely kill.
But
So
there,
like the assumption that it would have to be that it would necessarily definitely be that hot if this happened like that is wrong because we don't see what it would evidence.
but there's a second option whenever you say, well, we don't see those melted rocks and things. You're saying that we don't have a heat problem because we don't see those melted rocks. But the other option is we don't see those melted rocks because the young earth narrative is incorrect, and the narrative that science gives is actually correct.
Yeah,
Because
exactly. Okay, I
yeah,
understand, and
yeah,
honestly speaking, that is an option too. But
yeah.
again, it doesn't negate that if the young Earth is correct, we don't have a heat problem because of that. So it's either we don't have a heat problem or the old Earth model, current scientific model, is correct. But either way, there's no heat problem.
Well, that there's actually multiple heat problems, but we don't have to get into that. One of the things you brought up is transitional fossils, and you said that we don't find those. I brought some slides with examples of transitional fossils. Could we talk about those for a minute?
Sure, sure.
Okay. So let's start with this one. All right. What we have here is evidence of macroevolution, the origin of tetrapods, and it gives for this particular clade, it gives the different. Some of these are fossils we've uncovered. Some of them are speculative, but the fossils are shown there. And I want you to look at the top row that is color coded. And what this shows is that these same bones in these different species, and it points down to which one it is, of course, but we see that the same bones are present, but they change in size over time. gradually. Now, if you will, just hold on to that thought for a second and let me bring up fish. Here is an example of the, uh, the same thing taking place in uh, certain species of fish, and we see that we have the same bones present, but that over time that they slowly change in size and form. And one more. This is horses. Hyracotherium going to the modern horse. Specifically the forefeet here, we see that these bones are shrinking over time, and through gradual changes, we come to the modern horse. And one more finally, and then we'll discuss, okay? Skulls, which lead up to humans, and we have other kinds of hominids here. These skulls are one of the most well documented cases where we see gradual changes over many years, and that eventually we get to what the modern human skull is. And so whenever you say that we don't see transitional fossils, these are the things that we're calling transitional fossils within specific clades, so that you would have multiple examples.
Right. But I mean, really, you just showed me pictures and you told me a story. I mean, honestly, you didn't prove anything based on the assumptions that your initial theory is correct. That's all evidence. You can see it line up. But to somebody who doesn't believe, you just showed me a couple of skulls and told me a story. That's it.
Okay. So it's all right.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I don't mean to
The
be.
point of the story I'm telling you, which is based on fossils, not pictures. What I showed you there were pictures of some fossils there, and we have fossils for those things. That's why I chose those specifically. But the story that I'm telling you though is one that explains that shows that we do have transitional fossils, and is the scientific consensus. Is the best explanation for why we have the modern diversity of life, and shows how that life got to the form it is now through gradual changes over time.
Again, well, I mean, that's the claim, though, isn't it? I mean, and we've already seen that there were tetrapod evidence, right? I believe
No,
before Tiktaalik. So you're showing that out of place, and then the horse. I mean, they all look like the same to me, right?
so
You
so
don't, you don't. I
so
mean,
let's go back and look here. First, the horses. So what we start out with, it shows the teeth and the forefeet and the size of these animals. Um, I mean, we go from something that is less than the meter tall to something that is a meter and a half tall, which is quite a bit of difference. And these bones, we see that through each iteration, through each population, we see changes, and they're the exact changes we would expect to see under the theory of evolution. That we see the adaptation taking place. That's the point of it. Uh, those
okay,
are
so
clearly not the same animal,
they're not the same animal.
right?
So they didn't. So it's not adaptation. It's full on macro evo.
Speciation, yeah, yeah. That's what I
Okay,
was saying earlier. Is that my transitional fossils also show speciation? Um,
but speciation is just variation, right? It's just mutation. It's just variation.
Speciation is a new species arising, that and not only that, but like Hyracotherium, we don't have any of these others anymore. We have modern horses, right?
Right.
And these others, the adaptations occurred because of environmental pressures, leading to them being what they are today, and the others not being fit for their environment and becoming extinct. So
Right. No, no, I understand that, but you don't see the similarities between this and like what our selective breeding. Like you don't see on the bottom there like a teacup Chihuahua, and on the top, Saint Bernard.
Um, no, I see that these things are going through small changes over time, like
Okay, well,
evolution.
let me ask you: how do you know you're not looking at that? I guess is a better question, right? How would you distinguish between that and what you're claiming?
Well, in your example about selective breeding for dogs, that's human driven, artificial selection. There was nobody artificially selecting for these things. These predate. Uh,
No, I understand that, but I'm just making the point. These could all be just different sizes, shapes, and looks of the same animal. Which
well, I mean, I would say that
you're
that's
kind of
what
claiming
Olaf
that.
is, actually. I would agree with you. Olaf is different sizes, shapes, and things of the same life. That it's through this theory of evolution that we see that diversity.
Right, but like I said, though, how would you distinguish between that being a teacup Chihuahua and a Saint Bernard and being what you said if you didn't just?
Because of the differences in the molars and the forefeet.
So a Chihuahua and a Saint Bernard got the same teeth?
These aren't just the same species with different in different sizes. These are different. Their bones are different. Their teeth are different.
Okay, but
Their
I need you to
sizes
look
are
at,
also different.
right, but so are the examples that I'm talking about. They're all
No,
different. Yeah,
no, dogs all have the same layout of their bones. There's not it's they're just different sizes and
which is
I guess different. They're different morphologically in ways, but as far as their anatomy, it's the same on modern dogs.
well, it seems to be the same here too, except for that hoof.
Well, except for we see we 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 see these gradually going away. We see the teeth gradually changing.
Right, but I'm saying if I showed you this chart, but at the bottom was a teacup Chihuahua and at the top was a Saint Bernard, would that prove that the teacup Chihuahua evolved into the Saint Bernard? No, it wouldn't. It would just be different species of the same animal,
Well, that
different varieties.
teacup Chihuahua and the Saint Bernard though would they have the same skeletal structure. These do not. You would not look at these two skeletons and say that's the same animal.
The only thing I can see different, like if it's so different, how come it's only showing the teeth and the foot?
I mean, those are some of the major differences between these two. This is a big difference in the way that the legs and feet work. Um, these teeth become more fit for what horses consume. So, I don't know. I don't know
It
what
just seems
exactly
to
you're
be
driving at because the skeletons and the teeth are different.
right again, but I mean, it's okay. It's very subjective sounding and almost arbitrary. It sounds like this comparative anatomy. You're looking at these things and saying that because they're similar, they must therefore come from one another or something to that effect, and it just doesn't make any sense. Okay, you know what I mean? Like again, you can't distinguish between the modern dogs. It looks the same. I mean, you're telling me the whole skeletal structure is different, but all I see are teeth and a foot. So
Yeah, and if you looked at the teeth in the foot of modern dogs, they would all be the same essentially. There wouldn't be completely different skeletal layouts
well,
and
these are the same essentially, Joe. I mean, look at this.
no, they're
These,
not.
yeah, they
You
just
have
lose it. It's like the four hoof turned into one hoof. It's like the whole fingernail just grew into one. You know, that's the only thing. That's the only difference. Those are very similar.
yeah,
Right, not unlike the jaw of dogs, whether it's a big or a small, But my dog, I have Great Pyrenees, and he's got this dew claw high up on his arm. All right, do all dogs have that?
do all dogs have what now?
That dew claw that sits high up on the arm?
Yes, all dogs have the same skeletal structure. They're not. You don't have anywhere where dogs have a completely different layout to their body plan, like we're seeing here with the legs and the teeth of these. They're similar. They're just different breeds of the same animal. They're not.
Right, but I mean, like, what I'm saying though is like that seems no different because like all dogs might not all dogs have a dew claw on their back. They don't. They just don't, and that's pretty much like what you're showing me right there. You know, on the bottom they did have the dew claw, but on the top he didn't. It's kind of all you really showed me right there. But you know, it doesn't make them not the same.
Well, what you're saying about the claw, the skeletal structure of the feet is the same in all dogs. It's not there. It doesn't vary in that way.
Claw on their hind legs.
It doesn't vary that way. The skeletal structure is exactly the same in modern dogs. I mean, sure, we get a little bit of different shapes and things, but we don't get like whole feet changing into single-toed hooved animals. Like you don't see anything like that in dogs at all in modern dogs or in wolves to dogs or anything like that. But again, the point of it isn't just the horses. It's that I showed you several different examples of this same thing happening in multiple species. And these fossils are transitional fossils.
Okay, well, hold on.
Under
Go
your
back to the
narrative,
horses.
hold
Go back
on,
to the
hold on,
horses.
hold on. Even under your narrative, they're still transitional fossils.
Okay, well, I don't know about that. I mean, variation. Yeah, I get that. But on the horse thing, like, are you telling me that 0.4 meter horse on the bottom has the same skeletal structure as the one on top?
No, I'm saying it's different, and that is the problem with what you're saying. Dogs are
How?
not like that.
But I'm asking you, are those the only two differences though? That hoof and that tooth.
These are multiple differences over a long period of time, and there's more.
Okay. All right.
This is just a few. Um, and again, this process that I'm describing in the feet uh, is exactly what we see here as well. We see uh, the skeletal element being the foot, and we see the same bones changing shape and size over time to eventually become modern tetrapods. And this is going from water living animals, ray finned fish and lungfish, through multiple fish, and then back onto land, um, all the way up to modern tetrapods. And we see the same bones just changing size and position slowly over long periods of time, which is what transitional fossils are, and is exactly what the theory of evolution predicts we should see.
Okay.
Which is the major problem for you, because
Well, it's not a major problem for me. I mean, you got it all baked in the cake. Like, you just assume that these are all facts and that's the way it is. And when I ask you, well, where's your proof for that? You just show me another picture and tell me a
okay,
story. Do you know what I mean? Like,
you're
so
saying
it's
what
not
I'm
really
showing you are pictures, but I'm showing you existing fossils.
right, but it doesn't evidence anything except that what you're telling me in your story matches the picture.
All
That's
right.
it. You know what I mean? Like, they
So
are they are bones, and you've made this story and said that because all these bones look alike, and because we found them here, that means they all evolved from each other, and they're all part of a transition, and it proves macroevolution, and it just doesn't.
so I think the part of this you're missing is, under the theory of evolution, this is what we predict that we will see. And then whenever we looked, going all the way back to ray fin fish to living tetrapods, let me read this little insert here for you. It says, between 385 and 360 million years ago, a lineage of fleshly finned vertebrates evolved four legs and eventually the ability to walk on land. The steps of this transition are recorded in fossils, some of which are shown here. Many other lines of evidence, including stratigraphy, comparative anatomy, genetic comparisons among modern organisms, support this hypothesis. So it's not just that I'm telling a story here, I'm showing you the fossils that tell the story. And that story that these fossils tell is exactly the one that evolution predicts. And we found it after the fact. We predicted we would find these things, and we did.
Again, okay. I
So it's
mean,
not just a story. It's
I'm not going to argue when the prediction came and when the bones were found. I mean, I'm not going to argue that. So like it, but it still doesn't. I mean, okay, you nailed the prediction, but I mean, you can mess up on the foundation of a house and still get 2 or 3 stories built before the whole thing falls. Do you know what I mean? So like, so making a prediction about this is one thing. That doesn't prove molecules demand. It doesn't prove the deeper
no,
thing that you're trying to pass
no,
off, right?
no.
Like, because still, just like the horses, I mean, this is just a variation to me. It doesn't prove.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't prove that. It's one piece of things within transitional fossils, which is something you said didn't exist, and they obviously do. That it's one piece of the puzzle, and that's what I was. That's why I read that little thing to you that pointed to multiple disciplines of science that all
Well, those
that
are all most
followed
of those.
all of those things
I think all of
under.
them except one were also a comparative science. So it's just they're looking for similarities and general consensus and similarities.
Yeah, we compare those fossils to other fossils. I don't know what the problem is with that.
Because it's subjective. Like you're saying, okay, well these things look similar, therefore they must be this,
Oh
right?
no,
And
no,
then
no, no.
somebody else could come along and say, well, I don't think they look similar, and take them out. Now who's
It,
right?
you're telling me it's subjective that these are different. These fossils across these hands across the top, they're
No,
objectively
no, I'm saying it's subjective that just because they look similar, they belong together.
okay. So here's the thing. Science doesn't prove absolutes, correct? Like it gives you the information. Here's the evidence that supports this thing that we suspect is the case, right? So under the theory of evolution, if evolution is true, we predict we should find these transitional fossils, and that we should see these animals changing gradually over time. And then whenever we go find a line of fossils that follow exactly that and fit those other branches of science perfectly, no contradictions whatsoever, then it's just a story and there's assumptions and all that. It's that doesn't. I mean, these again. You just a minute ago said that these horses were all the same animal, so you're trying to play it both ways now.
No, no, no. If those horses are the same animals, there's not much evolution. It's just variation, like I was talking about with the dogs. So I'm not trying to play it both ways.
Evolution is variation, all right? Like evolution is small
You're right. I
changes.
agree. Well, I agree with that, but I'm saying, like, I believe that it's unnecessary to extrapolate that over millions and millions of years and say that this can become this.
Well, that's where
I don't see the reason for that extrapolation.
other disciplines inform this as well, though. Again, we have things like radiometric dating and erosion rates and plate tectonics and geology and paleontology, and all of these things come together and tell the same story.
Okay. We can't possibly get into every one of them, but
Right, right.
I disagree with that statement. To
So
sum it up,
let's talk about the methodology, because that's where we differ here, and that's why you're saying that they don't say the same thing. So the methodology under science is that we discover things and make observations, and we make predictions, and then we can observe, test, and confirm those predictions, right? Whereas what you're the position you take is that I believe this thing is true, and these other things that we see, um, are now explained because of this conclusion that I already have. Whereas science works from the bottom up, you're working from the top down, and
no,
that's the
I disagree with that too. I've been
so
talking
let's
about
talk
the
about
evidence.
information.
I've been talking about the evidence and looking at evidence and data with you this whole time.
So
I've never once invoked God.
so what piece of evidence, minus the Bible, right? Let's pretend the Bible doesn't exist. What piece of evidence would you look at that uniquely points to a worldwide flood?
That uniquely what? Well, you switched gears on me real quick. We
So,
were on
so,
fossils. Say that again.
Let me
Say it again.
explain the question first, okay? Um, again, if we have a piece of evidence and I say, well, we see these fossils laid down in layers over millions of years, and that supports the theory of evolution, and you say, well, there was a flood, and all of these fossils that you see are actually explained by this flood. Do you see how that's explaining from the bottom up and the top down?
No, because I just gave you a whole lot of evidence for a flood.
No, you didn't know. What you did
No, I
was,
did.
no, listen, you gave me things that fit both of those narratives and don't point uniquely to a flood at all. You gave
No, they do. You even agreed with me that these things are laid down by floods. You just think it was multiple floods, and I think it was one catastrophic flood.
right. You took and
Okay.
adopted the evidence that points to deep time and millions of years. You took it and adopted it to a young Earth and a worldwide flood. Do you see
No,
how
absolutely not. The sources that I was using were secular.
there aren't secular
You're trying to
sources
straw
to
man me,
use
Joe.
that narrative?
You're trying
There,
to straw man me.
give
Slow
me
down with
give
that.
me a
You're
secular
the one who
sign.
has done this. Hold on, brother. Slow down. For the last time and this time, you say things as if it's fact, and you just kind of press
These
that
are
out there, like,
facts.
well, this is a all disciplines agree on this, and therefore it's a
They
fact,
do.
and then you try to, but okay, that's fine. But then you try to project that on me, like that's what I'm doing. You're the one who every example you give
No,
bakes
no,
it into the cake, that evolution happened, deep time happened, molecules to man happened. You're the one that bakes it
no,
into the cake with every question and every scenario. I look
no.
at the evidence.
You are incredibly wrong. You could not be more wrong. Um,
Right.
the the theory of evolution wasn't that somebody came up with it. How do we explain this? We came up with the theory of evolution. Now let's go back and make things fit it. That's not how evolution came to be, and that's not how I've presented it. Um, that is exactly how you've presented the flood narrative, though. Uh, I've explained to you how we discovered these things, and then we built, because of these observations and evidence, we built our hypothesis and our theory eventually out of those things. Whereas the other way around is there's a flood that happened, and see these other things in the world, they fit that narrative. None of those uniquely point to a worldwide flood happening. They don't. And
Okay.
also the claim that secular you use secular sources. Give me one secular scientist that does not work for some outfit with creationist in the name that suggests the narrative that you're giving, because there aren't any.
No, when I was doing my opening and I was talking about the canyon in Texas that carved in 3 days, they were secular. They weren't young Earth creationists. I talk about the data. I don't talk about my special blend of data like you're accusing me of.
A canyon in Texas that was carved in 3 days. Is that what you said?
Exactly what I said. It was a mile and a half long and 23 foot deep.
I don't think that's. I don't have a problem with that either. It's the rest of everything you said about the fossils
Okay.
and about the
Okay.
mud and about the water and about the moon and all that other stuff that came from your preconceived notion of a flood. It didn't. None of that points to that.
Okay. I just proved you wrong in your initial claim. So you're just kicking on down the road to something else.
No,
All right,
no,
bro.
you gave me one example out of the 30 that you mentioned that is something that we don't disagree on.
That's the data that I'm talking about. The dinosaur beds, the boulder beds, the formation of the Morrison. This is all evidence that is out there and it's real clear, and it has nothing
And
to do with.
so
Hold on, and it has nothing to do with my belief in the flood. The evidence exists, whether you like it or not.
no, it doesn't though, because the thing of it is I gave you the scientific consensus explanation, right? And
I gave it to you in the opening. You didn't even listen to my opening, did you, bro? I gave it to you in the opening.
I
I
responded
told
to
you
much
what
of
they
your
said.
opening and my opening.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, I told everybody in my opening what the consensus was. Like this is very laid out. And I'm looking at the data that even you agreed was a flood. It had to have been a massive flood. You just think it was multiple. You don't think it was one. But for now, for some reason, you're trying to twist it up and make it look like I'm pulling things out of my ass, and you have no idea where I got it from. When 10 minutes ago you was agreeing with me.
Is it not your position that the flood mentioned in the Bible is the cause of these things?
Well, I mentioned a lot of things. There was all kinds of things that are responsible for these tsunami-like things. But like, if you're trying to back me all the way up, yes, I believe the Bible.
Okay.
Do you know
Okay.
what I mean? But I didn't invoke the Bible when I gave the reasons for these things happening and what it causes and what we would expect to see and what we do see. Like I
Well,
gave predictions too all along the Morrison
well, Joseph,
formation.
this is a creationism debate. And you're a young Earth creationist, so yeah, I I didn't expect that you do that. But it's not straw manning you to apply
Well,
the things that you're saying to the bigger picture.
no. I mean, you're right. Ultimately, you're right. But knowing that you're right shouldn't be forefront and negate anything that I've said because I haven't
No,
invoked
it
that.
doesn't.
I
And
haven't invoked that as my argument yet. Yeah, here you are bringing it up. I was talking about the floods. I was talking about the waters. I was talking about the boulder beds, the dinosaur beds, the fossils that were found there. I was talking about a number of things that didn't have anything to do with the Bible, but this is where we are.
yeah. Um,
Hey guys, I want to jump in here real quick. I just want to let you know we've been going for about 50 minutes for the
okay.
open discussion. So I don't know if you want to continue for an extra 10 minutes, so it's a full hour, or if you want to do conclusions.
Yeah. We'll go on for another 10, 15 minutes around that area. And then we'll go into it. That way we can get through this because I think that we're misunderstanding each other here. The what I'm trying to drive at here is that yes, we both agree that there were flooding events that resulted in these things happening. We do agree on flooding events resulted in this. The problem is that I think it was flooding events over millions of years, and the evidence points to that. The evidence at large, the model of our world that we've built points to that, and we're able to use that model to make prediction after prediction after prediction that we confirm to be true. You
But again, that isn't true. That isn't true, Joe, because if it took millions of years for that 300 feet of mud to form, we wouldn't have found any of those fossils. They would have decayed, gotten scavenged. Any number of things would have happened. If it took hundreds of thousands or millions of years for 300 feet of mud to cover them, we wouldn't have found any of them.
No, listen. I agree with you that these animals are covered up rapidly. I agree that that happens. I don't agree that it happened all at once. Maybe within one single layer, but that causes you a problem with your age of the earth is why we've skipped past that. Because you explaining this one layer doesn't explain all the layers below it where we go back and find body forms uh, for millions of years old. And if you apply that and say that all of these things that lived are here, then how do we get all those other fossils in similar layers that still took long periods of time?
I mean, how do you explain the non advancement, the non evolution? There's no change. These things appear and die fully formed. There's no change. There's no hundreds of thousands, millions of years of evolution in there.
I
So,
just
like,
showed you changes.
I'm sorry?
I just showed you changes over time.
No. Okay. So, this is it. I'm still on the Morris Foundation because that's what you brought it. I thought we brought back to. You're on the horses again? I don't.
And no, I showed you multiple different examples. I showed you four different lineages that experience multiple changes over time. One of them with many the hominids with many different examples of it. So I don't know how you're saying that we don't see that when I just pointed to it. You you wouldn't for your example, you wouldn't find that, and you don't because you're looking at one layer. You wouldn't see things.
Because it's kind of a significant layer. That's the whole point. That's why it's a big deal.
But when you look at the
It
rest
is,
of
hold
the
on,
layers,
it is 300-foot thick and hundreds of thousands of square miles. That is massive.
it's
And
not
that
hundreds of thousands of square miles.
it is, it's 6 to 700,000 square miles. Yeah. Look it up.
Okay. Um, the um, the the problem is though is that layer doesn't exist all by itself, right?
Correct.
So, and in these lower layers, we don't find any of those animals that we wouldn't expect to anyway. We don't find any of that. We find more simple forms as we go further back. And as we get to the layer you're talking about, we find forms that would fit right within that layer. And then the layers later, we find more complex forms on top of that. They are all, we've never found anything that contradicts that in normal situations. I agree. There's situations such as catastrophic flooding in some places, which has result in deposits of fossils being mixed up that were uncovered through erosion events. That there are exceptions to that happening, but that we don't see it on the scale of a worldwide flood, or even a worldwide flood on different parts of the world on different days.
All right.
And as long, and you know, the thing that would falsify your position back to the beginning was if there was an explanation for this, and science does provide the explanation for those previous layers, the one you're talking about and the ones after, whereas we're talking about one layer uh, with only a small number of body forms in it. So like all of those examples of horses, we don't see all of those in the same layer. We see that these populations.
Well, nope. Is there alleged to be a big catastrophic event or a flood where you find them? Like that's not really evidence. I mean,
Not necessarily.
nobody's accusing them of dying in a flood. So I didn't, you know what I mean? Like, well, I don't even know what you're talking about. But the reason we find these guys in the same layers because it's a deposition spot. It's a fossil bed. They all were gathered in the same waters and dumped there directionally.
So
Multi, like, okay.
no, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's all right. I mean, I'm kind of losing interest anyways. This is just a big like I say something and you're just like, well, nah,
Well,
and then we just move on to something else and it's like, well, nah. So
let,
yeah, no, we're just
well,
going in
that's
circles, really.
I mean, that's not really what's happened here. But here, I will cite an actual source that is, and I'll give you the, I'll post the link for it in just a moment, and it includes several scientific sources: American Association for the Advancement of Science, Charles Darwin, Richard Dawkins, Richard Feynman, Freeman, uh, Samuel Gould, and many others. But anyway, let me read to you this thing that's cited. Um, the worldwide scientific research community from over the past 150 years has discovered that no known hypothesis other than universal common descent can account scientifically for the unity, diversity, and the patterns of terrestrial life. This hypothesis has been verified and corroborated so extensively that it is currently accepted as fact by the overwhelming majority of professional researchers in biological and geological sciences. No alternate explanations compete scientifically with common descent, primarily for four main reasons. One, so many of the predictions of common descent have been confirmed through independent areas of science. Number two, no significant contradictory evidence has yet to be found. Number three, competing possibilities have been contradicted by enormous amounts of scientific data, and many other explanations are untestable, though they may be trivially consistent with biological data, which is where you fall in. When evaluating the scientific evidence provided in the following pages, and there's multiple pages to this, please consider alternate explanations. Most importantly, for each piece of evidence, critically consider what potential observations, if found, would be incompatible with a given alternate explanation. If none exist, that alternate explanation is not scientific. As explained above, a hypothesis that is simply compatible with certain empirical observations cannot use those observations as supporting scientific evidence. That's the thing I've been trying to explain to you. And hold on, I'll post a link for it so it's not just a story. This is, and all the citations for this are at the bottom of the page. And this is what I just read to you is one paragraph out of 30 or 29 examples of evidence. So again, the problem is that the claim that you're making is a hypothesis other than that, and what evidence do we have that is uniquely the answer? And you don't have that. You have you adopting evidence that fits a different narrative and saying, well, it also fits my narrative, which is a completely unscientific way to approach this. It doesn't make you wrong. It just isn't supported by anything. Whereas the position that I'm taking is the one that is supported and is the best explanation for these things.
Of course.
Doesn't mean it's the right explanation. It's just the best one we have. All right. Do you want to say, oh, you've got last word?
I think that's, I was going to say, I think that's a pretty good stopping point. Why don't we let Joseph give the last word? And
so I'm just going to say a few words in closing, and then you can say your thing, Joseph. And then we can address any questions. I didn't actually keep up with whether there were can I please sort my mod out? What did we need moderated that he didn't do? I'm not sure I agree with that. We weren't talking.
I apologize if it's my first time modding, so if I didn't do a great job, I apologize.
Yeah, I don't. No, you did fine. We weren't over talking each other. We disagreed, and we may have been passionate about it for a moment, but neither one of us was being rude or over talking each other. So I don't know why a moderator would do anything. I'll PC, do what you do, and I'll address it here in a minute if I need to. But anyway, let me go ahead and give a closing thing here. So the reason that today that I took the position that I did on this is because it's the one that aligns most closely with the scientific consensus, which I accept. The evidence that has been uncovered over time points to this explanation, and as we've refined that explanation over time, we've been able to make testable predictions about it, and have seen those come true, which is something lacking from the biblical narrative and the worldwide flood narrative. Something that it's incapable of doing is making predictions, and I'm sure maybe Joseph will argue that or whatever, and that's fine. But the I think that there were explanations given today that that fit multiple disciplines of science, and that again agree with the scientific consensus, and that proposing an alternate theory or hypothesis is a fine thing to do, and what people should do. But whenever we look at those two things, they're just not on the same footing. One of them is supported by evidence, and one of them is post hoc rationalization, which is the opposite. And doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's just not a good way to reach it's not a good way to do anything, because you're using a preconceived conclusion. But anyway, with that, I think that everything that we have, including radiometric dating, geology, paleontology, archaeology, cosmology, astronomy, history of different through Egypt and China and even the Middle East itself, having various different cultures that lived through this time period and recorded nothing about this flood that apparently killed everything on Earth. They went right on through it and have calendars and everything that again we have observed that point to this not being the case. So taking the position that this isn't the case is the best explanation and the most rational position. Doesn't make it right. Doesn't mean it's proven. Proofs are something math does. Science doesn't do that. It's just the best explanation for the evidence that we see, instead of being the best evidence for the explanation that we have. And again, I appreciate Will coming and setting through this, and I appreciate Joseph being a great person to talk to and debate and stuff, and being friendly and cordial and all that. I appreciate all those things, and that's all I got. Thanks everybody for coming. Go ahead, Joseph, if you like.
Thanks for having me again, Joe. I appreciate it. Will, I didn't have a problem with whatever you were doing. As far as the debate goes, yeah, like I said, I had to travel this week. I wasn't prepped. I feel like I could have done better. I probably didn't get my points across. There's definitely a couple things that I didn't explain the right way. I feel like we should have been on the flood and on Lucy. I thought that's what we agreed to, but it turned into a couple of other things. But no excuse, you know.
We can talk again, Joseph. Oh,
No,
sorry.
yeah. I didn't mean to sound like I was crying. I'm just lamenting it myself. I don't believe I performed well. You know, if I was looking at the game tape, I call it what it is.
I didn't mean to interrupt your closing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. I don't have much to say. That's all. I really wish we'd have stuck with the Morrison formation a little bit instead of moving on like we did. That's what I really prepped for. But, you know, again, like you said, we could talk again. There's no big deal. With, you know, I'm all right with it.
Joseph, I think that you've been an excellent interlocutor, and you have no idea how much I appreciate that, because, and I'm sure you experience this too, that it's hard to find these conversations that people can have civilly. And I even had one earlier this week that wasn't. um, uh, but I think that speaks. I think the fact that you and I can have a good conversation speaks to different problems with that previous conversation. But
Hey, right on. But I gotta tell Claude real quick too, though. I wrote the script. It's okay if I read from it if I wrote it. Okay, bud. Like,
yeah,
okay.
and even if you didn't, I mean, as long as you're not trying to pass it off as your own, that's fine.
Right. I mean, it's a 30-minute PowerPoint. I can't remember all that. I used to do drugs too.
So are you all right with Joseph, for me allowing like a brief after show type thing for some people to come in and ask questions and stuff? And
No,
again,
yeah. I mean, I have a commitment at 7:00, so I've only got like another 10 minutes or so. But you know, I'm down for whatever.
okay. Well, how about this? Instead of opening it up just yet, uh, I think that Will is a friend of mine, and that's why I got him on short notice to sit in on this.
I tried to be impartial, Joseph. I hope, again, my first time moderating, so I tried my best.
I didn't say anything, bro. I don't have.
I just
I think Will, you had a couple questions though, didn't you? Are you still there? Did we lose Will?
I can't hear it.
Yeah.
There he is.
Are you there, Will?
Yeah, I did, and I also wanted to thank you. I can hear you guys.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear. I just didn't hear anything. Do you have a couple questions you'd like to ask? And again, we can do this.
Yeah, yeah. And I just wanted to say I thought that you guys are much more civil and reasonable than most of the debates like this that I've seen. So I just wanted to thank the both of you.
Right on. That's what it's supposed to be about. It's supposed to come and let us reason together. Let's discuss these things.
Yeah. And I mean, go ahead, Will.
Well, I was going to say, do we want to do it live on stream or private?
Well, I mean, I guess we could just end the stream here, and since as long as Joseph wants to hang around at least for a few more minutes, and
yeah, we got like 15 minutes before he's got to bail.
All right, so let me do a real quick closing thing here, and I'll end it. All right. Again, everybody in the audience, I really appreciate you coming and watching this and interacting in the chat and all those things. And I'm sorry if we didn't get around to answering some of your questions and stuff. But Joseph will come back again, and maybe we can do something a little different next time, and maybe have one or two people come in at a time and do a panel type thing where we can all talk about it or whatever. Or maybe if Joseph fills up to answering questions from the audience, I'll moderate that, and audience members can ask questions if they want, and then as long as everybody's civil and not being rude and shit,
Yeah.
we'll do that if Joseph wants to. Again, we'll plan this out. Joseph will be back, though, I expect.
Yeah, that sounds good, man. That sounds
There's
good.
lots more things for us to talk about, but yeah, with that, again, thanks everybody for coming, and I will. I will. What is today? Saturday. I'll probably do some kind of stream tomorrow at my regular. Oh, actually, no, I won't. I'll be on the Atheist Republic of South Africa tomorrow. I'll be a guest on their channel, so I won't do a show here. I'll do one Monday. But I really appreciate everybody coming, and I appreciate Joseph and Will for taking part in this. And thanks everyone.